Welcome, everyone, to the Isipetu Women's Panel at DIF. The topic is Women Empowerment in Film. We have a lovely mix of female producers involved in animation and live action. We will hold a discussion with our panelists for the first 45 minutes and then they'll leave the last 15 minutes for Q&A. I'd like to encourage you all to send through your questions and keep the discussion robust and engaging. If you need sign language support, please use the closed captions on Zoom. I'm going to move over now to introducing our wonderful panel. I'll start with Zamaswazi Mfusi, who has a background in mechanical engineering and has been in both corporate and entrepreneurship for over 10 years, where she worked for multinational corporations. Her business partner and mother, Ms. Nkosi, studied African languages at the University of Zululand and is an accomplished writer of isiZulu books and poetry. She received an award from the KZN MEC for her contribution in the development of isiZulu. She also received an award from Pan-African South African Languages for her sterling work in promoting multilingualism. Tracy Lee Reyners is a reputable creative in story development, story mentoring, and screenwriting. Her work spans over more than a decade, her most recent being Seriously Single, currently showing on Netflix, and SAFTA award-winning film Address Unknown. Tracy Lee is a story consultant for a variety of organizations, including the KwaZulu-Natal Film Commission, the NFVF, as well as Netflix. She's a founding member of the Writers Guild of South Africa and previous council member. Being a content producer and director in 2006, Tracy Lee discovered her passion for writing and story development, which saw her specializing in fiction writing for TV as a writer, storyliner, and head of story. Tracy served as a mentor for Kenyan-based animation training organization, African Digital Media, and story consultant for Cat Animate Animation Studios. She is currently producing her own animation series called Cosmic Rays in partnership with Animation SA. The series is global positioned and targeted towards tweens, focusing on two indigenous twin girls who time travel from the future, unleash their dormant superpowers, and use indigenous knowledge system to save their family. Next on our panel is Yolanda Mokgotusi. Yolanda Kiabetswe Mokgotusi is a South African filmmaker and storyteller whose career in film and television has spanned over 12 years. Through her company 1000 Hugs Films, Yolanda has produced many hours of television content, and her transition into film has been met with much acclaim with her short film Hair That Moves and dance documentary Rumba in the Jungle, The Return, playing at many different festivals around the world. An advocate for female empowerment, both on and off screen, most of her films have a strong female lead, and her children's content carries a message of self-acceptance and personal empowerment. A sustainable fashion enthusiast, she is a regular mentor and moderator at the Nature, Environment, and Wildlife Film Congress, where she's passionate about equipping a new generation of impactful filmmakers. Yolanda's latest projects are two animated series called Rapulana and Lula's Gift from the Ocean, which won the Road to Annecy road pitching competition in 2022. Congratulations. Next on our panel is Jayanne Moodley, who started her career as an educator with a National Higher Diploma in Education. She completed her BS degree in majoring in mathematics and computer science. She soon realized that her passion laid in creative arts and embarked on a new journey in 2005 when she and her business partner, Siddheshwar Singh, started African Lotus Productions. She's been involved in various productions for SABC. Her particular interest lies in spirituality and the multi-faith concept. Some of the documentaries she has produced include The Shembe's Walk to God, Buddhism, Finding the Peace Within, and Ella Gandhi, The Hands That Serve. Her dream came true when she produced and co-directed and wrote the screenplay for the movie White Gold. Jayanne takes a keen interest in youth development programs. She's currently producer of the Hindu magazine program on SABC3, Sadhana, which is in its 8th season. Jayanne made her directorial debut with the highly acclaimed Keeping Up with the Kandasames. Well done on that. What a great success. She also co-directed The Dance, a short film produced by Quizzical Pictures. I just wanted to double check that we have Caroline in the room. Did she manage to make it in? No.
I don't see her.
We unfortunately do not have Caroline anymore, who was appointed on the SWIFT board. It's a pity. It would have really been great to get some information, latest information on the SWIFT situation. So, ladies, let me start with a general question and ask, how has your journey been as a woman in the film and television industry? Was it an easy journey or was it really tough? Tracy, let me start with you.
Okay, thanks, Isabel. I think it was a little bit of both seasons. There was a summer and there was a winter. So I started off in TV production companies and, directing documentary series and being on location in various places in South Africa. And I think that my mentors, the female producers in those companies, were really the light at the end of the tunnel for me. They championed me, but also male producers and male directors. So it was difficult sometimes on location, especially if you're the only female on location and you have to direct and herd a group of crew, men to call time, and we have to shoot something and deliver something. And I was very tiny with like a very small voice many years ago. And big curly hair and a bandana. And so it's like the whistle, everybody get into the crew van, we have to go shoot. And not many people would listen to me at the start, but I found my confidence, and I think that I had really good people around me. And even though it was difficult, I always looked for the positive, and that always helped situation. And I also found that in terms of going to speak to someone if there was a problem, for instance, my first production company that I worked at was Red Pepper Pictures, and I had a great relationship with Cecil Barry and Zam Nkosi. So I used to go with the crew, and we used to shoot in Limpopo, in Cape Town, in various parts of South Africa. And if there was an issue with a crew member or an issue around something, I used to walk into Zam and Cecil's office and tell them, and they would listen. It was so great. They would listen and they would do something about it, and so I've had a really good relationship with many producers, and even though there were difficulties, I found that there's always solutions. And I think it's communication and being transparent and being open about what the issues are, if there are issues, so that it can be solved.
It's so important to have the support of one's colleagues. It's empowering. Jayanne, maybe you can take us through a bit of your journey moving from education to the film industry. How was that transition?
Yeah, I think firstly, it's such an honor to be here this late afternoon with everybody. Women in film, I'm sure for all of us, is such a beautiful topic, one that is so close to all of our hearts, because we all know just 5 years ago or 6 years ago or 7 years ago, you could literally count the number of women of color directors or women of color producers that there were in South Africa. And, it feels like we've finally turned the corner and that our time is coming, which is a beautiful thing. But in terms of, whether it's easy or whether it's hard, I don't think we can really put our finger on the journey's easy or the journey's hard. It's just a journey. It's just a journey that we all start at some point. And like I always tell young filmmakers, you can go on this journey, you can walk this journey, but just how passionate are you and just how hard are you prepared to work? Mm-hmm. I mean, for me, I loved being in the sciences. I was in IT for quite a few years until I had my first baby. And then I decided I wanted nothing more than to stay at home. And then 2.5 years later, I had my second baby and I was enjoying just being at home. And a friend was opening a production company and said, in his little garage, as we all do, because who has money, to come from our communities and to be able to have that sort of seed capital to open up a big production company. And he said, you free labor, please come and help me. And that was my gateway into the industry. I always feel like I never thought of myself as someone in the arts, but it feels like film found me. I even the first film, the first big film that I directed, Keeping Up with the Kandasamis, I remember when we pitched it, the producers, Helena Spring and Junaid Ahmed, told me that I would have to direct it. And I said, oh, no, I haven't been to film school. I don't know anything. We're just part of the slate. It was an NFVF Black filmmaker slate. I said, I'm just here to learn from you. And there's no way I'd be able to direct a big film. And they said, if you're talking about my journey, they said, well, if you don't direct it, we're not going to take the film on as part of the slate. Talk about pressure. And that's why I say, it feels like somehow the universe conspires you to do what you were meant to do, even if you don't want to do it. Somehow that path just opens and you then sit on it and you have to walk it. It's never easy, for sure. But one thing I can assure you is that, I've changed professions 3 times now. It is by far the most rewarding and fulfilling feeling when you've been given this special opportunity. It's almost like an honor to be able to make a film or a documentary or a short or anything, to be able to tell a story. So yeah, it's been quite a journey. I think we're all still walking it. We're all still, wanting to create more, and we're wanting to do our cities, our provinces, our country proud. So, and I feel like it's also a huge responsibility on all of us to pave the way for women. For us to set the road so that they don't have to tell us in future just how difficult it is.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when I first started in the animation industry over 2 decades ago, I myself, Emma Kay and Jackie Trowell at the time were the only 3 women who owned animation studios. And thank God that has changed now. There's so many more. And also seeing the shift in the animation industry. Before it was a sea of white boys, and now seeing just how many females have gotten in. And it was a simple thing of us raising the awareness to the studios. It's just something that they unconsciously, that unconscious bias where they automatically go for the boys club and create that comfortable culture. And so it becomes so important for us as women to, one, raise their awareness to it, of their bias, but also in some basic research that we did, we found that a lot of the males, and even if they were really bad, their work was really bad, they would confidently promote themselves and sell themselves. And the women would be like amazing, but they would not like sell themselves. So it becomes easier for you to always be going with the males because they're better salespeople. So yeah, it really becomes important that we want to encourage that culture shift within our sphere of influence. I want to move to you, Zama. You did the move from mechanical engineering. I'm always trying to convince people from other industries to come into the animation industry. We have such a shortage of, producers and directors. There are very few. I mean, Jackie Trowell was the only female director that, worked on really big productions that I know of. I've yet to meet another female director in animation. So you've now moved into animation. Can you tell us a bit about that transition?
Yeah, thank you, Isabel, and I'm very grateful for this opportunity too. Mine has also been like one interesting journey. Coming from a very intense technical background, where I used to work within the context of a production environment, where even in that context I used to basically be the only female, even. Within the context of departments and leading men in some instances and leading some projects. So for me, even the journey of transitioning to the space of animation was really inspired by my daughter. So after evaluating where I was at the particular point in juncture where I was like, okay, I'm ready to start having children. One of the things I was like, I wanted to be at home, just have that, time to be able to really raise my children and really spend more time being committed in that journey. And that was, and it still is, a fulfilling journey for me. But in that, I got to learn so many things from just observing my daughter at that time, Kawekazi, growing and interacting with social media platforms like YouTube. And I was watching intently on how she was learning from different shows that were coming across, on these platforms. And I was like, something is not right, in that it was not bringing out the element of anything that's to do with us as African people, our South African cultures, our South African languages, and even the imagery that was coming across. It was not really speaking to her. And it was an incident. There's a number of incidents, in fact, that happened subsequent to that. When she was being integrated to school, in my efforts to try and teach her and ground her in Zulu, she struggled to integrate into a school environment and speak English. So that happened now that put us in a situation now we had to speak English so that she is able to acclimatize within the context of a school environment. And I remember at times where the teachers would even have to call me in to say, okay, she doesn't want to speak. She's finding hard to engage. Can you come in and we'll tell you and you ask her in Zulu? So those kind of things started, disturbing me. I'm like, what is going on? And what is it that I can do as a parent to be able to, change this situation? And then that's where I started to, explore the whole concept of how I can, get into the animation space and start changing the narrative for my daughter, through having had that kind of, that incident and many others. And what I found, through even just engaging in different research, is that there are certain parents who were experiencing similar struggles. To the point where some parents would be like, we have to send our children to the villages so that they spend time with their grandmothers or their aunts in the villages so that they can pick up, our culture, our languages. And other people are like, we have to hire extra, help in the house that speaks in our languages, so that we can, transfer the language. So all of that showed us that, there is a need for us to be able to put out the content that is relevant to our children. And that's then when I actually even started then embarking on, attending incubators. And I've done a number of incubators. And as a woman, we know that there is a challenge in terms of just breaking out into business, period, and the whole aspect of getting into incubator space, it helps us to network. And it's not, as you just explained it before, it's not an easy concept of networking and just speaking, confidently about where we're going, where we're at. And I believe that getting into the incubation spaces helped me to break down those walls, to start engaging people and talking, which then took me from one level to the next, where one person, as a woman, would be like, oh, okay, I know someone in this space that you're trying to get into. I can introduce you. So even the value of then creating relationships that will help you advance from one step to the next. And eventually then I ended up, meeting up with Isabel, for me, who's been, a mentor for me coming into the space. And one thing for me, I've always, even, from the context of an engineering background, I've had to, learn from, diving in and swimming, even in the deep end. And that's what I'm actually going through, even with this whole experience. I'm in the deep end and I'm like literally just, paddling, doing whatever I need to do just to get to the next step as I'm learning. But what I'm finding is that the whole common aspect of having the right relationships helps us to be able to develop faster and get to where we need to get to much quicker. And so even for my project called Ukhulu Nonana, it's that, I believe that even what we are doing as women here, passing knowledge to each other so that we help each other by creating space for us to be able to do the things that we're doing. That's exactly what Ukhulu Nonana is. It's about passing relevant indigenous knowledge to the younger generation so that they are able to stand up for themselves, and grow a backbone. But understanding and being entrenched in their own African identity.
Nice. Thank you. Yolanda, you also had an interesting move. You did the live action to animation move, like Tracy Lee, with your really cool project, Rapulana. She is just the cutest little girl with the craziest fun hair. Tell us a bit about that.
Thanks, Isabel. Actually, could I comment on something that you mentioned earlier, and I think something that Jayanne also mentioned earlier about, the statement of, we're female and we walk into these spaces and it's like you have to almost kind of go in there and it is what it is, it's like, so what, because I'd also definitely would want to be judged according to what I'm putting on the table, and also not just be, included either because I'm female or I'm just a Black female and even with what you said about how, a friend calls it having the confidence of, okay, no, actually, I was about to say that, I think it might be offensive, but having the confidence, I was about to say it, and I was like, no, this is important confidence.
I know the end of that statement.
Probably. But yeah, where people are so incredibly confident, but like surrounded by so much mediocrity. And then the people who have some excellent things going are so quiet. And actually reminded me of when I was working for one of the industry bodies, and how sometimes the associations take people onto trade missions overseas and all these film festivals and such, and just getting the sorting through the applications to forward to I think the DTI at the time. There were so few just like female entrants and so few people of color. And the thing is, it's like, it's the truth. It's like, and then people complain once once the list goes out of who is going on these trips and whatnot. It's like, oh, why there's so many white people on the list? You're not doing anything to empower women. But it's like, we literally had like 4 females sending stuff. Like literally, that was it. And I think when I was working with that institution and I saw that back and I was like, oh, this is where the problem is. It's like, there isn't enough. There just isn't. And you're right. We don't apply for these things. We don't do these things. And I think, like, having encounters like that made me see that, there is room and there is space to try different things. But you've got to, it depends on how you see yourself and whether you allow yourself to step into these spaces, and give yourself permission to, what, I'm gonna go for that. I don't know if I'm gonna make it through, but you know what, I'm gonna apply anyway. And I think that's been part of the journey, kind of moving from live action to animation, and even moving back to live action a little bit. It's just the taking the chance and allowing myself to be like, you know what, you can do this. So many people are doing it. Why not you? Why not you? What? Like why? Like why not? Mm-hmm. And the transition was really from when I made when I had transitioned from making television. Television was too much of a factory for me, and I felt like my creativity was being stifled a little bit. And I was like, no, this is not what I went to film school for. This is not what I entered this industry for. I need to make stuff where I'm making stuff and I'm trying to be creative and I'm exploring. And that's when I went into film. And I went into film with the short film Hair That Moves. And the interesting thing with Hair That Moves is, it's like that slow burner of a project where even now I'm still getting invitations years later, for it to go to festivals or things like that. But through meeting different women, different people, even not even just women, actually, who have just issues or stories around their hair, and they're just all over, not just like locally, but also so many women internationally, and so many older women. I'm like, really, do so many people have so many issues with what they look like and what's going on the inside? And I think I got to a point where I was just like, no, man, come on. Like, how do we, like until when? And then I just wanted to create something where, the little brown character has no issues with what she looks like, no issues with her hair. She loves herself. She just like kind of burst out of her mom's womb thinking she's the best thing since sliced bread. I was like, I just need to create a character like this so we can move beyond, oh, my dark skin, oh, my hair. No, like there are other problems in the world. And I think that's where the character of Rapulani came from. I just really wanted to create a confident African kid who just has this hair that just does not look like it, like the standard kind of this looks neat or not. It does not look neat. It does not look like how it's supposed to look, but she likes it like that. And the world must also live with it. And she likes her skin and all of that, but she's dealing with other things. And so that's how Rapulani came about. And I did want her hair to be magical, because when I had my afro, I really loved playing around with it. And I remember once going to a hair salon. I would normally go into but I was so desperate to get my hair done, and I needed to get my hair straight, like a blow wave. And so the ladies, they were like, "Oh, your hair, like it's very coily, girl. Like it ain't gonna happen." And I was like, "No." And there's this hairdresser, and I kind of spoke them through it. Like, "No, I saw what he did. You just need this brush. You need the, your blow dryer. You need the water, whatever." I literally talked them through it. And as they started, because my hair was like, but as they blew it, it was just like these long traces came about. And I remember the one hairdresser go, "Wow, that's your hair." And also because it was like half done, half flat was still wool, and then it was like half done, so you could see the difference. And she's like, "Is that your hair?" I'm like, "Yeah, like that's all me." And she was like, "Wow, it's like magic, hey?" And I was like, "No, I guess it kind of is, right?" Because as soon as I go back into the rain, the magic goes the other way. But you know what I mean? Like it can do all of these interesting things. And so I did want to play a little bit with that, and just what you can do with your hair, and I think that's where the magical element of it came into it.
Yeah,
and then I think
Lana has magical hair. That's her thing.
Yeah, that's her thing. That's her thing. The hair can do what it needs to do, but it's still hair, and it's still like African hair. So as soon as it gets the water, it goes back to default settings. It is what it is, So so I just wanted to create something that was along those lines, and animation was the only way I could do the whole magical hair thing. And I think that's how that came about.
I love the fact that it's promoting that kind of uber confidence in young girls, because I see it in my daughter. I'm like, oh, I'm so glad she was not a shy person like I was. I worked so hard to get rid of my shyness. I'm now just an introverted extrovert. So I have to work very hard at being extroverted. I want to move to a more serious subject, and it would have been nice if our Swift member was here. But I'd like us to discuss it just in terms of how it has impacted women in the industry, because when the Swift research came out, it was absolutely shocking. I did not know that it was that bad. So it'd be nice to know from an industry perspective, have you felt the impact of Swift and the work that they're doing for women in the industry? Jayanne, can I start with you?
Yeah, sure. But before that, I just want to say, what Zama said about changing the narrative for her daughter, that is so beautiful. When your how you want to bring up your child impacts your work, and what you're doing is so powerful now. I think you might be doing it for your daughter, but you're doing it for so many children out there. And please continue, because I'm speaking from a second, third, fourth generation Indian South African, where our parents took the decision at that stage to not teach us our mother tongue, because they were so worried that we are not going to be able to go into higher education. So it was almost as if an entire generation took a decision that English was going to rule. And we've lost it now. We can understand it slightly. We can speak it very little. And we feel robbed.
Yeah.
Now, as we get older, I can tell you that I'd fight with my dad and I'd say, "Oh, but you speak it so fluently and you never taught us." And he's like, "We did it for your own good." And I guess for them, it was, out of desperation at that stage. They saw education as the only means of sort of giving us a better life. But what you're doing, in terms of holding your culture and your tradition so strong and so close to your heart, particularly in terms of passing it on to your daughter and to future generations, I think it's so beautiful. And Yolanda, what you said about just apply. You spoke about the trip where there were like only 4 female applicants. And I'm thinking back to my first short, where I think it was in 2012 or 2013, and the NFVF had put out a call for a female filmmaker slate for short films. And I'd basically done like nothing much at that stage. And I thought, a short film, it's so overwhelming. And, being in KZN, we often feel very lonely because there's like, maybe you can count how many filmmakers on our hand. So I had heard of this filmmaker called Bonnie Sitebe. So I got her number somehow, and I phoned her and I said, "Hi, Bonnie, my name is Jen. We both, female filmmakers in Durban, and there is this call out by the NFVF. Do you want to come in with me? I mean, like a sort of sisterhood, and let's try and do it for our province." And we co-wrote and co-directed our first short together. And if we didn't have the guts, because at that point you think you're never going to be selected, you're up against so many people. I mean, you have all those thoughts, all those insecurities. But what Yolanda said was so powerful. Just apply. Just go out there and do it. You have to constantly take those first steps. In terms of Swift, I think it's so important that we have an organization like Swift in our midst, because no matter what, we do face different issues as compared to our male counterparts. We want to believe and we want to live in an ideal world where we don't, but we know that we do. And I think that they are making very real strides. I must admit, I have not been as active a member as I should have been. But I try and, attend some of the workshops and watched some of the shorts that they did at DIV. But I do remember from one workshop, there was a takeaway that I make sure I use when I'm on set. And they said, you either write it on your call sheet, or the senior females of your crew, make sure you speak to the younger females and you say, if you are sexually harassed in any way, you come to us. And I remember it was one of my films where I put it at the bottom of every call sheet. This is my number. WhatsApp me, phone me, call me if there is any nonsense going on. Because all of a sudden, Swift brought it to our attention. I didn't even realize it, just how bad the situation was on sets with the crew. So a definite need for them, but I don't think we can ever do enough. I think we have to, still keep going.
Mm. Yeah.
Can I add something there, Isabel, with what Jayanne just said? I think, when you go into the film industry, you no matter where you're coming from, you're stepping into this culture that already exists. And I think just overall in the film industry, there's just this culture of being overworked, this hierarchy, that you're working through, and you're at the bottom of the pile and the producer's at the top. And you're an actor, you're just talent, nameless talent, and we step into so many different cultures within the film industry, and everyone's trying to find their place on this hierarchy, on this building up this thing, and it's so difficult. I think as an individual, even if you're coming in there with your own values and such, to speak up against our whole culture. I think even, our country, in terms of racism and things like that, that's been clearly evident, fine, the rules or the laws have changed, but people's mindsets, just what they do in their homes, behind closed doors, it takes such a long time to change just the culture of things. And you mentioned broke culture as well. There's so much broke culture still on set, And if I think about even my very first TV show, I was collaborating with a male friend. And I think even as young as we were and whatever else, people were always putting up against us because we got so much backlash because we were working on this Afrikaans show and we were these young graduates from film school. How did you get a show? Wada, wada, wada. We just got so much just not nice backlash. But still, him being there and being male, I felt almost like, okay, there's a little bit of a buffer, and you could feel it. Whenever I was by myself, then people are ready to take their shots and all of that, And even when I was directing my own things now for the first time, even the comments from our cinematographers, who's the commissioning editor you're working with? Are they female? Are they? And it's like they ask me that because they can see the kind of the kind of criticisms we would get, because we're trying to get the show off the ground, but we're being treated in a certain way. And I think, changing a whole culture it's really, really difficult. And so I think what you said, Tracy, even in the beginning about how it's so amazing if you encounter people who are with you on your journey and who want good things to happen for you and who do want to mentor you well. And I think Jayanne with Junaid and I forget the other producer's name. Like they were very, very, from my brief encounters with them, they're very embracing of young and new talent, emerging talent. It's like, let's take you on, you know, but that's them. So I'm sure there's a certain culture that's on their set. And not everyone is like that, I think. And so the trick now is to kind of navigate and find those people who indeed are aligned with what you're trying to do, who indeed are aligned indeed with maybe what the Swifts of, you know, our industry are trying to do, and not those who just want to kind of keep the status quo what it is and can be at the helm of this bro culture. So yeah, I just wanted to add that.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, I remember in my young age, there was a brand statement that really inspired me, and it's just do it. And it helped me to throw myself into the deep end every time when I felt fearful. When I was going into the animation industry, there were, you know, this one woman company, which was Jackie and Emma's company. There was no Black people in there. And I was terrified, but I thought, you know what, I'm just going to do it. And I just started researching it. And the more I researched, the more I saw, oh, wow, that just means that there's more opportunity for me to do this because nobody is doing TV series and film. So I just dove in and started learning, entered business plan competitions and refined my model and kind of pushed through. I was very fortunate. I didn't feel that I experienced sexism in the animation industry so much as I did racism. I think that was more my experience in the animation industry. Sexism, but also I'm generally such a fighter that I think any sexist who would try and pull it off wouldn't bother going there. And maybe Tracy, you can tell us a bit about the impact of Swift on the industry from what you've experienced.
So I also have to admit, disclaimer, I'm not very active a member. I should be, but I am a Swift member, and I think it's a very important organization. And I found a lot of connections on the Telegram group. I think there's such a helpful group, especially if you're searching for talent and you need information about IP or copyright, or guys, do you know what this means? And there's always someone to send you a document or refer you to a lawyer or refer you to someone you can speak to about an issue. So I think this ethos of sisterhood is really important. It's actually the bedrock of my animation series, Sisterhood is Forever. So it's twins, but it's really about women working together. And I've been inspired by it because I've had some fantastic women. So just to sort of curve off the Swift question just for a second, Isabel, I've had some fantastic women, I have to say, you know, around me. And it's so strange when you start off in the industry, and Yolanda, you're so right, there's a culture that you walk into, right? And everything looks so much bigger than what it is because you've sort of made it so big in your head. Like, oh, that is the producer and that is the CEs. And, you know, and those are the exec producers, especially when you're a first time producer or you're just out of film school and you walk into the industry. And I had met this producer. I'd seen her, I'd watched her speak, a commissioning editor. And I really liked the way she worked with her crew. And I really wanted to work with her. And she left the organization that I was working in and she was working in at a time. And I remember it was First Wednesday Club. Remember the First Wednesday Club? And she was sitting there, and she's just so elegant and beautiful and sophisticated. And I was psyching up. I'm going to approach her. I'm going to introduce myself. And I'm going to tell her I would like to write something for her. And if we could work together, maybe. And as I was approaching her at the coffee table, a few other people approached and I sort of just U-turned. Years later, I pitched to her for something. It was actually Junaid's slate. I remember that Jayanne was there as well, and these are like the producers I want to be in the room with. It's Helena, it's Jayanne, and it was Bongi. The person I'm speaking about is Bongi Salani. And then I did approach her. It was like 6 years later. So I pitched on that slate. I didn't get it, but I got to know everyone, which was great. Sometimes you don't get what you want, but you get what you need, and also got some really good feedback. And I had coffee with Bongi, and I had a couple of ideas for a TV series. And we actually made TV films together. I actually did approach, and I actually realized that in my mind, I had thought that she wouldn't be accessible or she would be too busy. But when I met her, she was like, she is one of the best people I know. She wanted to know more about me, about the story. And we spoke about things and we made those TV films. And we still work together on various projects. And it's the one thing I think we spoke about it just before we came into this room about women speaking about you and championing you when you're not in the room. And it's a lesson that I've learned from her and other producers. So, you walk into a room with execs from various organizations and they said, you know what? This producer had said this and this about you. And it's like your heart beats so fast and you want to cry because you're like, it's a beautiful thing. And they didn't know that they were going to be mentioned, but they said these beautiful things about you that sort of launched you into different areas and arenas. And it's something that that I value, I appreciate, and I want to honor by continuing. That if we see talent around us, female talent especially, and skill, to share, this is a great makeup artist, this is a fantastic writer, to champion these, I think, women, these, these filmmakers in the rooms when they're not in the room. Because I think that's how we build and that's how we converge and grow. And I think it also feeds into this philosophy of abundance. There's so much out there for all of us. We don't have to be, fighting and competing for scraps. We have to think about the universe in an abundant way and work together and form these bonds. And it's like a little family. I mean, we know each other for such a long time. I know everyone on this panel for such a long time. I met Yolanda years ago. And watching her journey as well, over the 12, 13 years from Writers Guild, from, her TV shows, it makes me so happy and it also inspires me. It's like, oh my goodness, she's got this fantastic podcast. Oh my goodness, look at this animation show. She's doing so well. We've reached out to her, like, how do you do this? And she's so gracious. She shares information. Isabel, you're a fantastic producer. I've worked with you. I'm on your incubator and you just share everything. And that is, I think, your philosophy, Ubuntu. Jayanne and Zama, we're in conversation all the time. And I think this is a powerful thing. This is something that we have to be intentional about. Growing, right? And also by also appreciating and saying to each other, I value you. And, I see that, I see what you do. I see the reference. And it has made a difference in my life.
Mentorship, having mentors and champions is so critical. For me, in the early days of animation, Jackie Trowell and Emma Kay, instead of competing with me, just embraced me and supported me. And that just made such a huge difference to my journey. Zama, who've been some of the sort of female champions that have helped you on your journey?
So, Isabel, to be honest, there's been quite a number of male champions from my side, because obviously coming from the industry that I came from, I've basically
mechanical engineering.
Yeah, coming from a male side of things. But there were a few women that one continues to, aspire to, get in the room with them. And one of the things, like I must say, Isabel also has just been such a champion for me personally. I remember even before she was telling me, Zama, come and pitch, for Ukulunona on your concept. And I was just like, I almost brushed it aside because I was like, I've been batting my head against this, almost like a wall. Sometimes you do on your journey feel like you've reached a wall and you're like, okay, I've done everything I know how to do. But now I'm like, I'm sort of like, I'm not sure what to do. And just Isabel coming through and just saying, Zama, come on, just come and pitch. Come pitch to Matthew, the producer, and let's just see and get the feedback from him on what his take is on Ukulunona. And for me,
we're about to go into the audience questions. So we're going to have to wrap it up soon.
Okay. So as I said, Isabel and just Matthew from the mentorship program in the incubator, he's been super for me. He's male and he's white, and it almost presents a different dynamic. Here's a male white man who believes in me as a young black woman, a novice in the industry, and says, you know what, I believe in your concept, it's going to work. That for me has just, taken me to different levels in terms of believing in what I'm capable of doing, even though I'm still, sinking and swimming at the same time. But I really believe, just you two have just done a remarkable work. And it's about just continually giving of yourself. And there's different people who, when you watch them, you can see that everything about them is about empowerment. But, it's not about self-enrichment, but it's about creating spaces for other people to be able to rise. As you just said, Tracy Lee, there's enough pie for everybody. There's not, we shouldn't be like, fighting each other to be able to just get to the space. Find your niche, find your space, and you'll be able to, connect with the right people to get to the next level. And for me, it's also mentorship at a peer level, in the incubator. I'm with Isaac Chokwe and Josi Ntono. They are superb guys. I mean, these guys are amazing. They are helping me. They are just like, Zama, let's walk this journey together. So at a peer level, I'm seeing that kind of interaction with males who understand. It's like, what, we need to bring our sisters along so that we make this room much bigger, and just, all of us being able to contribute our own unique talents to be able to produce big and amazing things, because we need to transform not just the industry, but the continent. I mean, the whole of Africa has to transform. Everybody's waiting for Africa to be on the platform. But if we spend so much time, dogging on each other, then we are not going to get there. The world knows that we have the potential. So it's just about us, working together in a very constructive way that helps us build towards, creating a film industry that is really going to boom in the next decade.
One question is, what is your competitive advantage as a woman in this industry?
I think for sure it's now widely acknowledged that the female voice has been so ignored. And the female story has been told by the male. I mean, up until just a few years ago, any female story was told by a white male worldwide. Whether it was a story from Africa or from Hollywood. So I think a very real competitive advantage as a woman in this industry is that because that is now acknowledged, there is a thirst and a hunger for more content with women-centric stories, for films and series driven by female producers, female directors. I hate saying female producers and female directors. I always say, like, why can't you just say you're a director or you're a producer? But when we're talking about a competitive advantage, I will use that term right now, because I certainly think for women, we are living at a time now where our voice is going to be heard. And I think in a few years' time, it's going to be roaring. So, it just depends on, are we willing to be a part of this transformation that is happening? We all know it's happening. We all can see the kind of content that's coming out now. Previously, if there was a woman in a film 10 or 15 years ago, she was the wife of someone, or the girlfriend of someone, or a sexy someone who sat in the bonnet of a car, But nowadays we have women also telling our own stories. So I think it's a very real competitive advantage that we have, just having the strong female voice in the industry.
Anyone else want to add to that question?
Yeah, I just want to add to what Jayanne has just said. Actually, as you were talking, I'm reminded of, I think I once spoke to a European female director and producer. I'm forgetting which country specifically she's from, but she just made all of these films about all of these women behaving badly. And I was like, all of them are women who want to get out of their marriage, women who don't want to be mothers, women who are just bored with their marriage. They want to, see what else is out there. But like just women behaving badly. And I was just like, wow, like all of your characters are just like these women who are not indeed the typical, the wife, the mother, the sexy girl. And literally, sometimes it feels like that. I used to go to a lot of auditions once upon a time. And the audition was either for you are super sexy or you are mom. Like those were the two roles you could get as a female, like you sexy girl or mom. And it was so interesting kind of seeing even the characters that she was working with. It was almost like giving permission to females to just be human. It's like, sometimes you make mistakes. Sometimes there are things you don't like. Sometimes, you also just want to kind of just figure yourself out. It was so interesting just seeing the work that she was doing. And I think, Jayanne, you're so right. The stories that we come up with. Now, I write a lot of stories about hair. I have a very big fascination with hair. Like literally, even if I did not make a story that had something to do with hair, I will find a way to find one scene where there's like a hair thing going on in there. I will slip it in there. And for me, whenever I do bring up all of my hair things, even the like the hair game and whatnot that one's working on right now, it's very much like, hair, of course, that's so obvious. But like a guy's not going to think of that. Why would a guy do a thing about hair? It's like, no, that's boring, man. But it's actually not. It's very fascinating. It's like hair is very important, even for guys. Even guys have things and identity things, linked to their hair and how they see themselves and such. So I definitely think, indeed, our perspective and how the stories that we tell, and even from the viewpoint we tell it with, and I think even how when we shoot things like sex scenes or a woman's body and such, you can see it. You can see, when it's shot differently. And I loved some of the stuff that Shonda Rhimes does with some of her stuff, where it's the boys, it's the men who are topless and whatnot. It's not always the woman who's like half naked and whatnot. Why is it always like that, And the woman will be fully naked, but the guy will be, just up until like his waist and stuff. And it's like, and she keeps twisting stuff like that around. And so you can see it, you can see the perspective and you can see how different it is from the male gaze. So
in animation, I started to see, as I, interviewed males and females for different positions, saw how different the female palette was, artistic palettes. Their selection of colors is completely different to what men choose. Their styles, their lines, all so completely different. And I thought, this is such a critical issue to address, because it becomes a case of males dominating the artistic aesthetic for our children, as opposed to ensuring that women balance that out, because we have girls and boys out there, and exposing even boys to that kind of softer palette and the very different artistic styles that women bring was so important to me. So
could I add something there very briefly? Sorry, Isabel. Sorry, so just as you, with what you just said now, when we were working on Rapulani and trying to get her look right, so I had the guys, some really talented guys, really kind of, come up with her look, and eventually we agreed on what she looks like. But even with that, we have to have a sit down and be like, no, you're not getting her right. We need to get, her eyes must look like this, her nose, give her an African nose, or, all of that stuff. And then the hair was a thing again. And I was like, but even the texture around the hair, and I had to get a female to kind of take a look at that for me, and a female to understand why that was so important, and a female to kind of almost like polish everything, everything that the males had given me, and to be like, this is why, because she got it. There was so little I needed to make her understand about why it was so important to make her pretty. Just make her pretty. The amount of times I was like, great, your illustration is fantastic, but just not make the brown people pretty now. Can she be cute? Like, how many times like I said, be cute. She got it. It was like, just make her cute. Of course she needs to be cute, But I just wanted to agree with what you just said. The females, every time I do ask a female to come in and help me just polish something, literally, they just add something and they get it. They get it from what I'm trying to do in my spirit and my soul, and without me like having to like, okay, give us your notes and shapes, and like break it down like that. They just get it. So I just wanted to add on to that what you just said now, Isabel.
Tracy Lee, you also worked with female artists. What was that like?
I think it's when Yolanda speaking now, I was like, preach. I was like, because we had just sent through artwork to the storyboard artist, and she has to soften up the characters. She has to make them girly. I don't know. I know that's a bad definition, but she has to sort of make them aesthetically appealing, softer. So that it's hair, it's just the chin. I'm busy with that at the moment, and there is a definite difference, from male input and female input. I think everyone has value, but I think if you're dealing with female stories, it's I would recommend having a female artist there to help you. But also, just in terms of the story development process, I wanted to come back to your original question about what is my from a story development perspective, and having worked with story developers, male and female, I find that the female story developers have more of a lateral way of dealing with story and story notes compared to most male writers and most male storyliners, just in terms of plot. And I find that there is some sort of an energy and a way of being that you pour into your processes. And just from my own experience, I was a very top-down person in my 20s. So I was very masculine, in a sense, in my way of doing things, right? But it was only after I had my girls that I started reviewing outcomes, but also reviewing my processes, right? And I find that my lived experience and also my sort of evolution into motherhood has helped me nurture a bit more and listen a bit more and step back and sort of just be without having to occupy and say and direct, So there's a different form of leadership that I'm still learning. So it's a brand new sort of journey for me in terms of this nurturing way of developing story and creating story and working with people on the team. So everyone feels, because feeling is important, everyone feels like they're bringing something to the table. Everyone feels they have a purpose. And even if you're giving feedback or notes or critique, it's how you do it, So you don't break anyone's spirit, but you get to the point of trying to fix the problem together, right? And work together on that journey. So I find that from my experience, being a mother has changed that. I wasn't like that before. I was very box sticky. Okay, we've got that. Let's move to the next thing.
Like, I was raised with this belief that, the feminine is weak, and so I'm not going to be like that. And my mom was so shy and introverted. My dad was extroverted, and I was like, I want to be like my dad. So I really worked on not being shy and introverted. And so I became this uber masculine female, and Joburg is such a masculine city until I moved to Cape Town and had a very different kind of feminine energy, feminine experience, just a whole reconnection with my own femininity. And a whole new world blossomed for me, just my whole approach to life, to teams, to people, to my business. It just was phenomenal. So I am in all support. I believe that this is apparently the feminine age that we have moved into.
Amen.
Amen.
In closing, I just want to say, I'd say we've got 2 minutes. I was on a lovely directors panel yesterday with two amazing directors. Two guys, and they were just saying, one guy was saying he's called the king of chaos because he just goes on set and he's just, he just wants to play and work and create. And the other guy was speaking about how finicky he is. And I just thought in my mind, on set, then people just normally call me mama, and I think for me, that's the sweetest thing, because it means I'm taking care of people. Mm-hmm. You're not just making a film. Yes, we are making a film, but I constantly remind myself, we're just making a film. It's people here, people who are giving you so many weeks of their lives to help you make the film. And I think, when we speak about the female voice, it's at every level, from development to the shoot, because we all know how tough this industry is and the long hours that we work, and then to the final product. And I just want to see more and more and more films by female women filmmakers, and more women stories, and just more of that touch.
Oh, ladies, this has been such a great discussion. I am just so in awe and inspired and excited for just the potential of what women are going to be doing in the next decade. I think it's going to be leapfrogs from where we come from. I want to thank you all so much for making the time for this and sharing yourselves and your knowledge. And I give big ups to all of you. Keep keeping on and keep doing the beautiful work that you do. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.
Isabel.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Time